Hi, I'm back here again in SwiftPOS Touch, and in this video I'm going to be talking about clerk time clocks, clocking on, clocking off, reviewing that data at the end of a shift, and also reporting on that data in SwiftPOS back office. So the first prerequisite to this is that you do actually already have clerks set up. I did cover this in a previous video, how to create new clerks and modify existing ones. So if you haven't already done that, go check that video out. But here we'll be proceeding as if we already have all of the clerks set up that we need. So I'll start here in the Tools button at the top right hand corner and in Terminal Settings, and then in the Clerks tab. There's an option down here which says Show Clerk Clock In Out panel. So if we tick that and press OK, at the very top of my screen, there'll now be a purple button which says Clock In. So when your staff arrive at the start of the day or the start of their shift, they can come up to the terminal, tap on Clock In, and this panel will be displayed. So first of all, the clerk will enter their number, whichever their number is, and press OK. Then they'll have an option to clock on. And then they can close that screen. Now if that clerk number 4 is about to go on her break, she can come back here, tap on that button again, enter her clerk ID and press OK, and she'll have an option to either start a break or clock off. So we'll choose start break, OK, and close. Now she's come back from her break, she enters her ID number, presses OK, and ends her break. Now you can create as many breaks as you want throughout the day, and each one will be incremented as the clerk starts and ends that break. But we can assume that this clerk has now finished her shift and she's ready to clock off. So we'll go ahead and choose clock off, and OK, and close. Now I'm going to run through that quickly with a few other clerks just to build up a little bit of data, and then we'll take a look at how that data is managed at the POS and also in SwiftPOS back office. Alright, so I've gone through and clocked on and clocked off a bunch of stuff, and now we'll take a look at how that data looks. So somewhere on your keyboard you should hopefully already have a button for preview time clock data. So at the end of the evening or whenever you need to preview your time clock data, you can hit that button and another little window will pop up. At the very top you'll have some date range filters. You'll probably want to choose the date range today. And here in the grid you can see all of the different clerks that have clocked on or off. There is a setting up the top here to show only incomplete shifts, ones where the staff member has clocked on but not yet clocked off. And you can toggle that on and off as needed. So here in the grid you can see the details of each individual clerk, the time that they clocked on, when they had their break, and the time that they clocked off, as well as the total number of hours worked, which in this case is 0 because I just clocked them all on and off very quickly. If you had pay rates configured, you would also see a wage in this column here, and a role as well if that person had a role assigned to them. Here you can see that the first 3 clerks have breaks. The 4th clerk does not have a break. She simply clocked on and then clocked off. And the 5th clerk has clocked on, but they have not yet clocked off. As you're reviewing each staff member's clock on data, you can edit the various fields by clicking on the edit button down the bottom. And you can adjust their clock on times and clock off times, as well as the duration of their breaks if you need to make a correction to any of that data. If there's a line here which has been entered in error, for example, a clerk might have clocked on the wrong clerk number, you can simply delete that row. And if a clerk has clocked on but they forgot to clock off at the end of their shift and there's nothing in this data, again you can come in here and edit this entry and enable a clock off time and adjust that to be whatever you need it to be. At the bottom of the screen, you have an option to allow committing of incomplete shifts. So if Lindsay had not had a clock off, then we can still commit with that entry in the grid here. If this setting is not enabled, then that means you'll only be able to commit the line entries which have a clock on and a clock off time. Any incomplete shifts will remain here in the grid, and you can remove them if needed. If you have a clerk who doesn't have a clock on or clock off time at all, you can go ahead and add that person manually by clicking on New, assigning them a clerk number, and then enabling their clock on and clock off times. Once you're happy with the changes you've made here, you can save your changes and click on Commit. It's going to prompt to warn you that you're about to send this data to the server, that is SwiftPOS back office, and you can say yes to that, and the data will flow upstream to SwiftPOS back office, where you can then run various reports on that information. And I'll show you how to do that now. Okay, taking a look at SwiftPOS back office. Here in the clerks menu, there's an option for clerk time clock. If you open that, you'll see a grid very similar to what we saw at the terminal. You can choose a particular date to take a look at. I only have data for today, but if there were data for yesterday, you would see that. And we can see all of the different clerks who had shifts which we committed. Here again, we can make any changes to this data that we might need to make. So for example, we can adjust again the time that this particular clerk clocked on if we need to, their breaks, and also the location in which they were working if we do need to change that information. There's not much else going on here. This is basically a second place that you can review and change clerk time clock data. Perhaps a little bit easier when sitting in front of a computer with SwiftPOS back office than doing it at the terminal, whichever is more convenient for you. And then there are various reports which we can run on this kind of information. So we'll take a look at those in clerks and reports. And then clerks. And in here you can run various different reports that interact with that particular data, as well as other data associated with clerks. So for example, the amount of sales they might have done over a given period. For now, I'll just take a look at the shift daily summary report for today, and I'll leave the remainder of my filters blank, so that will choose any data that might be relevant to this report, and I'll preview that. Here we can get useful information about the amount of hours worked, as well as the total hours across all clerks. If I had different roles set up, I would also get a total for each role. So for example, servers or bar staff or cleaners or whatever you have. If I close that report and take a look at the shift detailed report with the same filters, there's a fair bit more information here. It'll show each individual clock on and clock off, as well as each individual break that was taken for each staff member, as well as totals for individual clerks, individual locations, and then your overall totals. So a lot more information on the shift detailed report. And some of these other reports might also show information about clerk hours worked versus sales processed or sales made by that clerk. You might like to take a look at each of them to see if they have information that is relevant to you. Anyway, that's a brief summary of clerk clock-ins and clock-outs. I hope that's been helpful for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.